Right, this is it. It strikes me that every Wednesday we ask different people to tell their story. And the only person really on this channel now who hasn't really told their story is me. So for the next few videos, which I will put into a playlist, and they will be numbered by parts, this is me telling my story. And I feel I need to do this. I hope that it will help some of you to listen to it, and it will help provide some context for some of the other videos on the channel. But I'm primarily doing this for me. I'm primarily doing this because it feels now is the time to talk about it. And sometimes if you were on your own spiritual journey, if you're on your own awakening journey, and I use that term quite loosely because it's been battered around and meaning a lot of things lately, you may feel that you have had times where you feel you need to do something. You don't quite know why, but you need to do it. So this video, in a sense, will serve as a prologue because there's a certain thing that needs to be discussed in order to put my story into some sort of context. And it's an interesting video in its own right, and it's something that, for me to talk about it, it is actually quite difficult because it's not something that I always think about, but it is something that's always there with me. And that is, guys, that I actually have a visual impairment. Now, I do basically most of the editing work on this channel, and as you guys know, when I work psychically, I work very visually. When I describe things, they work visually. But it might strike you to know, or you might have worked it out, some of you have, some of you haven't, that I do actually have a disability. And when I was born, the doctors thought I was completely blind up until I was about 1 year old, and was able to speak and discern a little bit about how I see. Excuse me, got something in my eye. And it's always been the question that it's very difficult to answer, and this is been quite the same with, in a sense, with like when people see things in the paranormal and that sort of thing, right? Now, I don't know if this is the same for the rest of the world, but this is how it works in the UK. Basically, if you imagine 2020 vision is 100%. And if you can see, let's see, from 80% to 100%, then you are classed as having normal vision, let's say. If you can see between, let's say, 60% and, or let's say 50% and 80%, then you are classed as having, or being partially sighted. If you're 50% under, you're classed as blind. My vision is probably about 30 to 40% of normal vision. Basically, the optic nerves, the nerves behind my eyes, didn't develop during the, my birth development, and therefore the signals from my eyes to my brain do not reach or get interpreted properly. So what happens is I get what is like a bit of a tunnel vision. And the way I describe it to people, this is how I've worked out after many, many years of people saying, well, what can you see? And I'm like, well, what can you see? Because we don't know for a fact that each person sees exactly the same thing. We see enough similar to say, well, that's red, that's blue, that's a couch, that's a blade of grass. But we don't know to what effect everyone sees things in a different way, right? But the way I've kind of described it is, if you've taken a 16:9 frame, so let's just say a television, right, of an aspect ratio of 16:9, so most monitors, right, this film here is being shot in 16:9. So if you basically cut it down the middle, so you got left eye, right eye. Left eye is basically screwed. I have very little peripheral vision. If I was to cover this eye up, I can just about make out shapes and maybe some colours, and I literally have no definition. My right eye is where most of my vision comes from. So you would say I would black out maybe 30% on the right hand side of the right eye, and it basically is like a tunnel. So it's almost like a bit like a tunnel. Put the two together, it's kind of a tunnel. It's not like I'm looking down a tunnel when I'm viewing something, but like the kind of aspect ratio of my vision then, I suppose, is if I was to put it on a full thingy, it would look like a tunnel, but it doesn't. It's not perceived to me as a tunnel, and because my eyes see differently, I have very little depth perception. And people say to me, well, how can you edit videos? How can you do things like work as a paranormal investigator? Well, over time, I have learned to adapt to the vision I have. I can use aids. So, for example, if I need large bodies of text, I use a speech synthesizer that reads the screen for me. If, for example, I am going to places where I don't normally go, I used to be vehemently opposed to this, but my vision slightly deteriorated in the last 6 or 7 years, so I found myself in a place where I have to, and you might have seen it in one or two of the videos, but I use a cane, a long white stick. There are many ways that I've adapted to using this vision. One of the difficulties I've had, and this probably factors a lot into my personality, why I like to spend a lot of time on my own, is because I miss a lot of social cues. I miss a lot of, when I'm in crowds of people and people have, visual communication to each other, body language, things like that. I miss all of that. I do, completely and utterly. And there have been many instances where people have been having conversations, and because I've missed those cues, I've said things and they've actually been quite funny. I wasn't, at the time I probably didn't take them as being funny, but afterwards. What I've found is throughout my life, and it's only been the last 6 or 7 years that I've actually come out of my shell. I used to be a lot shyer than I am now. I used to find it a lot harder to communicate than I do now. And I kind of went through that transition from about 2008 to about 2013. It took me about 5 years to sort of come out of my shell a lot more than I would have beforehand. I didn't like new people. I found it very, very difficult around new people. If I was ever working on stage. Now the weird thing is I actually love working on stage. When I've done clairvoyant nights and I've done psychic nights and paranormal nights, I just genuinely tend to be okay with it. And the biggest issue a lot of the time I've found is actually putting other people at ease. And the way I do that is I don't take it seriously. There is very rare times where I do actually take my eyesight seriously, because I've known no different. And a lot of people, when they look at things like disability, and they look at things like they try and put themselves in that other person's shoes, they go from the perspective of, what happens if I lost my sight? Well, if I lost the sight I have now, that would be quite debilitating for me. Actually, if I gained more sight than I have now, that would still be debilitating for me. And people can't quite understand that, because they look at the perspective, a lot of the time people look at it from the perspective of, what happens if I lost my sight? What happens if I lost my hearing? Which means that they would have had the frame of reference for having full vision or full hearing or whatever in the first place. Now I think, like, I've never ever been in a wheelchair, and it might be different for different disabilities. I've always said that I would never want to change my disability, because everything I am has adapted around having the vision that I have. This is why I always laugh when people want to turn the lights off when investigating the paranormal. And I'm like, well, yeah, you could, but you're probably going to find I'm going to fall down some stairs, or probably going to be smashing into things, and you're going to think it's a ghost, and you're going to find me in a crumpled heap somewhere. Which will probably be quite funny, but at the end of the day, the paranormal will happen, irregardless of whether the lights are on or off. It's a Hollywood trick, basically. It's a media thing that the lights need to be off. It just makes it look a bit scarier, and ooh, you know. And yeah, it does. Obviously, when I put videos together, I have left out the bits where I have had to be guided. The video where we did the abandoned hospital, for example, now that was a ball ache, because I literally had to be hanging on someone's arm all the way through it. If I'm in a crowd, when I've done clairvoyant nights and people want to come up to me at the end, I tend to sort of... That's why I like it when Richard's there. Sorry, Rich, but Rich likes to mingle. And I tend to be, when I'm working on stage, I tend to retreat for a while. I will kind of intermingle a little bit, but I do find crowds quite disconcerting when I'm walking through them. And I often find that I do actually need guidance. I need someone's shoulder to hold on to, and that sort of thing. And so this has been around me all my life. This has been something that factors into a lot of my own story. And I've never spoke about it on the channel. I've never sort of said about it. Like this year has been especially difficult for me with regards to my vision, right? I'll give you an example. Social distancing. Now, if you're to stand 2 meters away from me, I can't see you. I can see maybe your figure. I can't recognize you. I can't see your facial features. I can't see what you're gesturing towards. 50% of, if not more, of my interaction is through touch, and you might see this on the Now debates. I tend to fidget a lot, and the reason is because whereas a lot of people will most people will use their eyes for stimulation, because we do need constant stimulation as part of being human, right? I will often move my hands because it's an automatic thing. And you try and stem it as much as you can. And like me and certain members of my family used to have arguments about this, because I used to say, well, there's a lot of blind people who do this. They might rock back and forth, they might move their hands, they might stamp their feet or whatever, move their head, and they don't realise they're doing it. And it's because they are needing that stimulation. And I've always been a big proponent of stopping that. But when you actually see a blind person who tries to stop it, they actually look really awkward and really uncomfortable, right? It's why you tend to find there's a lot of that, and you'll have different people with different sight impairments with different degrees of it, right? So that's why you see that. When I look at the camera, you might see it now. If I can't look at the camera because I have a nystagmus. So basically that means I can't focus my eyesight on, I can't focus my eyes, so I can't sort of look to the left, look to the right, look up, look down. My eyes will do what they goddamn please. I could actually be looking right at you, and my eyes could be looking there somewhere. It's a bit weird like that. It is a bit strange like that. And I think, you know, that's one of the things, that's what the message I want to get across with making this video is, as an old friend used to say to me, it's society that disables you. It's not you who are disabled. We all have things that are, you know, right and wrong with us, I suppose. Maybe that doesn't sum it up correctly, but we all have flaws. We all have eccentricities. We all have things that make us who we are. And one of the things for me happens to be my eyesight. So I thought I would have that little bit of a discussion with you guys first, because I think it's important. And when we get to part 2 of this story, of this video, you will understand why I've done this a lot more. So thank you for watching, guys. You know, let me know what your thoughts are. Do any of you guys have a disability? Do any of you guys have something that you live with daily that has sort of been there throughout the story of your life? You know, I'm a great believer in telling your story, and it'll be a version of my story. You know, there are things that I will not tell. There are things I keep private, but this will be an overarching kind of insight into kind of my spiritual story, hopefully. And I hope that by telling this story, it's going to help me, because that's where I feel it needs to be at the moment. But I also feel it's going to help you. And I'd love to know what you guys think in the comment section below. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Hi guys, it's Jared from Paranormal Now. I hope you like the channel and hope you like the content. If you do, check out some of the other videos on screen now and click the button below to subscribe to the channel. Hope to see you soon. Take care of yourselves.